When you wake up in the morning, after snoozing your alarm, reluctantly dragging yourself out of bed, and going through your morning routine, your first thought usually revolves around how the day will proceed. I hope today goes well, you might remark, and if the weather is especially pleasant, then you'll probably believe that the day has already gone off to an excellent start. On beautiful sunny days, we might expect that those days should go well due to the simple reason of pleasant weather. Whereas on other occasions, like a work presentation or a wedding, expectations are high because it's imperative that these events proceed according to plan. Regarding expectations, everyone has them for a plethora of different reasons and objectives. They're important for ideas like one's conduct, where I expect that I will act honestly and work hard to achieve my goals, for example. However, expectations are more commonly utilized for life events, hopes, and desires. We expect that life should operate according to a vision we possess in our minds, and we're displeased when it doesn't occur, totally or in part. Although simply possessing expectations isn't inherently detrimental, this doesn't suggest that there aren't any pitfalls. When do our expectations lead us astray, and if possessing particular expectations will lead us astray, should we retain any of them? Furthermore, can expectations be too high, and can we have too many of them? Attempting to answer these questions will be the focus of today's discussion, along with the realization that many of our expectations will lead us astray unless they're properly tempered. To begin, expectations can be positive because they prove to be a powerful motivator. Parents have certain expectations for their children, particularly that they'll work hard and reach a certain standard. The pressure to succeed is often enough motivation for children to perform well and strive to improve if they aren't. This phenomenon is comparable to an employer's expectations for employees, and these expectations are required to set a particular standard. At the individual level, a person will likely possess expectations for themselves. They realize that if specific goals are to be actualized, then they have to put in the work. This necessitates being honest, punctual, studious, and various other character traits, etc. Evidently, if I know myself, then I understand what I'm capable of. Hence, I can expect that I'll achieve my goals because I know that I am capable of doing so. The only caveat, however, is that this expectation can only be justifiable if I actually put in the work. Digressing now, a third set of expectations that stem from these first two sets, that of individual conduct and expectations for other people, pertains to how events unfold. Otherwise known as the principle behind the promise, these expectations remark that the future can and should occur along a given trajectory as long as the sufficient prerequisites are satisfied. In terms of education and career, numerous people already comprehend this notion when they attend post-secondary institutions. They expect that if they sacrifice present gratification for the future and get the required education, then they'll eventually attain their dream job. With endeavors such as these, quotes like, "Trust the process," and "This is not a sprint, but a marathon," still ring true no matter how platitudinous they may seem. Because there's validity to the principle behind the promise, people reasonably expect that their hard work will pay off and outcomes will arise according to their vision. Nevertheless, when does this methodology fail? What are the pitfalls that arise with this perception, especially if one is stuck in a rigid tunnel vision? The downfall of possessing certain expectations, along with retaining ones that are too high, is that life doesn't always proceed according to plan. In fact, the opposite is more than likely to be true. There's plenty of order in life, but there's also substantial chaos. Circumstances can change just like that, with your entire world being upended, sometimes in an instant. All too often, we paradoxically expect that everything should function optimally in an imperfect world. This flawed belief leads to increased frustration and detracts not only from rationality, but also from satisfaction in general. The reality is that one should be grateful when everything is operating smoothly, because when we really analyze phenomena, it's a miracle that our complex systems function so well at their present level. Take for example when you're driving. Sometimes it's ostensible that every car is on the road. When that's the case, it's really quite amazing that more car accidents don't happen, because they certainly could with all of the individual elements. In our personal lives, there are likely numerous goals and desires that haven't manifested the way we initially wanted them to. This could be education taking longer than expected, or a job search not playing out like we envisioned it would. We want our desires and goals to be fulfilled as soon as possible, but this doesn't always happen. Expectations will lead you astray if you don't realize the simple fact that not everything goes according to plan at every moment in time. There are hiccups, setbacks, and failures of conduct by ourselves and other people. Additionally, life will sometimes throw a wrench in our plans even though we have done nothing wrong. All we can do is adapt, and this requires us to temper our expectations. But how can this be performed in practice? Tempering our expectations fundamentally involves a pragmatic mindset grounded in reality, with a healthy dose of gratitude. When circumstances aren't going well especially, you need to be grateful that the situation isn't worse, because it certainly can be. Count your blessings because they can and will be taken away if they're permitted to. So, tempering expectations means that whenever one approaches a situation, they should be open to various possibilities and outcomes. This is so they can adapt and plan accordingly to whatever outcome arises. For more consequential events, like a work presentation or wedding, adequately prepare and take the required steps on your end so you can remark that you did all that you could. Most of the time, this is sufficient to ensure that these events go well. But for the occasions where circumstances go awry, if you have little to no expectations, then you won't be as disappointed. You'll be able to adapt and, on the flip side, when everything goes well, you'll be pleasantly surprised. Feeling pleasantly surprised is far better than experiencing immense disappointment due to unrealistic expectations. If you still aren't getting the idea, here's an example from my life. Dating can be an arduous process, and a whole host of expectations come along with it. A vital component to this endeavor's success is that of socialization. You have to go out and socialize for there to be any possibility of getting a date. Before I changed my mindset, I recall possessing expectations around social gatherings that did more harm than good. Prior to certain social functions, I kept expecting that I would eventually meet the woman I would start a serious relationship with at those events, or something along those lines. When the event concluded and that expectation was left unfulfilled, then I would be immensely disappointed. Possessing this flawed expectation, or rather setting expectations too high, is what led me astray. Once I shifted my mindset, this was when everything improved. I abandoned those beliefs, and when I attended future social events, I would have little to no expectations. My thought process was simply, I expect that I'll go there, socialize with some great people, partake in decent food, and have a good time doing that. Nothing more. In other words, I had a whatever happens, happens attitude, and this not only allowed me to be less disappointed, but it also enabled me to be pleasantly surprised when unexpectedly pleasant moments arose. Like when I met the woman who eventually became my girlfriend at an event I didn't necessarily expect to. The point is that expectations can be both a blessing, a powerful motivator, and a curse, a great disappointer. They must be used wisely, and this requires resisting the urge to have unrealistic expectations, like believing everything should be perfect at all times. In conclusion, retaining expectations are valid and necessary. As an individual, you need to hold yourself to particular standards if you want to achieve your goals. Expect that you should improve in some fashion if you aren't where you currently desire to be. As for other individuals, there needs to be more leeway because you ultimately cannot control what they do. You can influence their behavior, but people don't always act how you wish they would. In spite of that, though, having expectations for others is still necessary even if they won't always meet them. Evidently, planning for divergent outcomes is a must, and so is adapting to them once they arise. Your expectations will lead you astray if you allow them to, but they can also be a valuable ally. Most importantly, remember that for anything and everything, always expect the unexpected, especially when it's least expected.